Hey there, welcome or welcome back to my channel, Diana and the Book Hunt. Today I have a very fun challenge video that I've thought of that I want to show you. I've planned it already ahead, already at the start of the year, if I have to be honest, because I had quite a few books to read for this challenge. And it's going to be my ABC alphabet challenge, where I'm going to share with you books that I picked up this year. Each of the books, the 26 books, are corresponding to each letter of the alphabet. So the titles start with each letter of the alphabet. It's a very simple challenge because I'm a very simple person. I'm not very well prepared to do very difficult challenges yet. I hope that I will improve in the future, but this is something fun that I thought of that I can share with you by the end of the year in kind of a tier ranking format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share 26 books with you today. I'm going to screen record my screen where I'm going to be tier ranking the 26 books, which ones I loved and which ones I possibly disliked. And I'm going to keep it as short as possible, where I'm going to explain to you in just a simple sentence what the book is about or what kind of tropes there are in the book. And also, basically I'm going to screen record my screen and share it with you once we start off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to also explain the categories that I've set up. There are only 4, and they're all based on food because I'm a very much a foodie, so I love any kind of food, with exceptions, like very small exceptions. And the dislike that I've included here is one of the few things that I don't like. So you're going to see that shortly. And yeah, it was a very fun challenge to do, but I have to be honest, when I started off in January, I had a list of books prepared for each of the letters of the alphabet. And then by October, I'd finished most of the books, but there were still a couple of letters missing here and there. And the books that I had prepared for those letters were really big books. So I kind of replaced them by October so that I could manage to finish this challenge, but still I managed to finish all 26 books that eventually I had planned out. And those are the books that I'm going to share with you today. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to screen record my screen. It is recording, that is good. So let me start off by sharing the categories with you. There are only 4 because I'm very simple like that. I need only 4 categories to show you which ones I like and which ones I don't like. The first one is the crème de la crème. This is a French saying for best of the best. In Bulgaria, we definitely use this phrase in real life, so we definitely use this, and that's why I thought of it first. So the best of the best is the top category, and then the second category will be homemade cake with a cherry on top, because I cannot think of a better thing to eat than homemade cake with a cherry on top. So those are really great books that didn't really make the best of the best category, but were really enjoyable reads, like 4.5 star reads that didn't make the top. And then we have the apple strudel category, where it's still really good. I love apple strudel, but I love it only at certain times. I wouldn't eat an apple strudel in the summer, for example. So really kind of 3.5 star books that did well, in my opinion, were well thought out of, or I enjoyed them for some parts, but were not really my favorite. So they didn't make it to the higher categories. And then we have the last category, that is licorice. I hate licorice. So that is one of the things in the food category that I dislike. Really, as a foodie, you can give me almost anything to eat, but this one, I just cannot deal with it. So if we have any book that I dislike, it's going to be in the licorice category. So to make it fun, I've made these 4 categories a bit fun, related to food, and I'll possibly get hungry by the time that we finish this video, but that's okay. I'll find myself something nice to eat by the end of this video, and we can go ahead and start. Now, the first book, actually those are not arranged by alphabetical order. I don't know why. I think this one should be here. Or here. Anyway, we're starting. So the first book is Amari and the Night Brothers. This book is possibly, I think, the first book that I picked up in January overall. and I really loved it. It's a middle grade fantasy book that focuses on a girl whose brother has gone missing, and by way of trying to find him, she discovers this magical academy that she enters. So basically, in one sentence, that is the best I can do to explain what this book is about. I'm going to link a video below. Hopefully, I'll try to do it for all of the books where I discuss it in length, but I definitely love this book. I gave it 5 stars. It's one of my favorite books that I picked up this year when it comes to young adult or middle grade fantasy, so I definitely enjoyed this one. It's going on the top. And then the second book is Booklovers. Booklovers is a long-awaited book by everyone in the romance community, I think. And I have to say that while it was entertaining and I did have fun with it, I did not enjoy it as much as I'd hoped, or as much as people we meet on vacation or beach read by this author, by Emily Henry. So I have to say that I'm going to put it in the apple strudel category. Unfortunately, I had hoped that I would be able to put it in the homemade cake category, but unfortunately I don't think, looking at all the other books that I'm going to put up in the other 2 categories, that it can make it to the top. Just a short sentence about this book. Basically, it was marketed as an enemies to lovers situation between a book agent and a book editor, and they kind of go to the same small town, one of them for vacation, the other one to help out with his family business, and they keep on meeting each other and kind of also working together, and they develop feelings for each other. It wasn't my favorite, like I mentioned before, so hence not the best category out of the 4. The next book, Crying in H Mart, I actually gave 4.5 stars, and I'm going to put it in the homemade cake with a cherry on top, because this book was really emotional and it really got me feeling all of the feelings that I believe the author wanted us to feel. It's a memoir that focuses on the writer's journey with grief because she lost her mother, and basically she is rediscovering her Korean roots because she's half Korean, half American, or she's Korean American, and she's kind of rediscovering her identity in her South Korean roots, but also dealing with the grief of losing her parents. So I really love this book. It made me cry, so I have to say that it was definitely worth it. It's more serious, it's not a romance book, I have to say this, so bear that in mind if you haven't read it yet. This is definitely a book that you're going to need to prepare emotionally for before you pick it up. And then the D, for some reason, has gone in here. I don't know why, but it's Daughter of the Moon Goddess. This book is going up at the top in the creme de la creme category because I absolutely loved it. It was very fast-paced, young adult fantasy read that focuses on a Chinese retelling of the daughter of the Chinese moon goddess. So we're following a very interesting, at least for me it was interesting because I was obviously not familiar with this kind of a legend around the moon goddess, and I really loved it. There was a lot of battles, there was also a romance, there was just a lot going on within this book, so I definitely loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and it's going to end up also in my top reads of the year when it comes to young adult fantasy. So definitely top tier. The E stands for Everything for You by Chloe Liese. It's the 5th Bergman Brother book within the Bergman Brothers series, and it focuses on Oliver and Gavin, I think his name was. We have a male-male romance, and it's a Grumpy Sunshine age gap romance. I absolutely loved this book. I give it 4 stars because when I compare it to the other Bergman Brothers books, I have 2 others that I love more. So I am going to put it in the homemade cake with a cherry on top category. Don't be mad at me if you love this book more than me, but I really loved it, but it's just not the best of the best. So yeah, definitely the homemade cake with the cherry on top category. After the E comes the F, and that's the 4-day fling, which we're going to put also in the homemade cake with the cherry on top category, because this book was really fun. I don't know, I think I expected it to be just a regular book that is going to be quite forgettable, because I don't know, I saw the cover. The cover is this beautiful ginger woman who looks a bit kind of sexy and provocative. So I was like, okay, this looks fun, but it looks a bit forgettable, to be honest. But I really still remember it. I read it back in January, I think, and it's still vivid in my mind. We have a romance which includes fake dating. They're going to be going to a wedding, and she kind of finds this guy with whom she has a one-night stand, and she proposes to go to this wedding with him as a fake date. And she does not know that he's a very famous hockey player, and her family is all about hockey. She's the only one who doesn't know that he's famous. So it was a very fun ride, and I really, really like this book. So definitely homemade cake with a cherry on top category. Now, the next book is another young adult fantasy book that I tried out for myself because I had not read any V.E. Schwab before. And I'm going to say that I'm not sure that this author is for me, even though I have to try another book to see whether I'm going to like her other works. But this one definitely wasn't a favorite of mine. It wasn't bad. It was definitely beautifully written, but I'm going to put it in the apple strudel category. The book is called Gallant, and it involves an orphan who is in her teenage years. She is in an orphanage, and then she receives a letter saying that she has some long-lost family who's living at this estate, and she's invited to go to this estate called Gallant to visit them. And that estate is kind of enchanted. So it was an interesting read, but it wasn't a favorite. So that's why it goes in the apple strudel category. Now, next up, it's kind of getting dark, isn't it? But we're going to push through. The next book was a very steamy book, and I really, really liked it. I wouldn't say that it was a favorite of mine because there were some issues that I had with it, but it was definitely a very fun time. Even though it was quite long, I didn't notice that at all. It was just, I flew through it. I really, really liked it. The book is called Hush Hush by Lucia Franco, and it's definitely going into the homemade cake with a cherry on top category. The book involves like a college student, I think that she is, and she is having some money trouble, so she gets a proposition to work as a high-end escort where she's earning a lot of money, and she falls in love with one of her clients who is about 30 years her senior. So it's a very big age gap romance with a lot of steamy times in the book. Next up, we have another middle grade book that I actually have had on my TBR for forever. I think I've had this book for maybe at least 3 or 4 years on my TBR, and I've always wanted to pick it up, but for some reason I kept putting it off, and this challenge was the exact kind of reason that I pushed myself to pick it up this year. And the book is called I, Cosmo. This book was such a cute, engaging, entertaining book that involves the relationship between a dog and its family, and specifically the boy with whom he has like the closest relationship. Cosmo is a golden retriever, and actually we're seeing the whole plot develop through his eyes, and that's the most fun thing about this book, honestly. So definitely, if you're interested in, if you're an animal lover, especially a dog lover, I think that you will love this book. So I definitely enjoyed it a lot, and I gave it 4 stars, so it's going into the homemade cake category. Now, the next book I picked up for a reading vlog a couple of weeks ago. It's Christina Lauren's Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. I did have fun with it, but reflecting back, I wouldn't say that it's a 4-star read or that it's a read that is very memorable for me. I think that maybe in a year's time I wouldn't know what the plot was. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in the apple strudel category. And yeah, definitely Christina Lauren have some books that have worked better for me, also reflecting in that direction, so I'm going to put it in the apple strudel category. Now, a book that I read more recently is Kindred by Octavia Butler. And this book I picked up because, again, I had it on my TBR maybe for at least 2 or 3 years. And I wanted to pick up something that is a bit different than all the other books in this reading list that I made for myself. The book is a historical fiction book that involves time traveling. Now, I have to say that I'm not the biggest fan of time traveling in books, but this one was really special. I really loved this book. It was very intriguing. I think I gave it 4.5 stars, but reflecting back, seeing what kind of an impact it had on me, also thinking about it now, I think I'm definitely going to put it in the creme de la creme. So I'm going to put it on top because it was a very special read. It involves a woman of color who is living in the 70s, and she for some reason travels back to the 1800s where she's still considered a slave, but she is actually in her real life married to a white person. So at some point she travels back with him, and it becomes really difficult to explain to the people of that time how it is that she is able to marry a white man while there's still slavery going on at that specific period of time. So it was a very special and very provoking, thought-provoking read. So I definitely think that it's one that is going to stick with me for quite some time. That's why it's going on the top of the list. Now, the next book, Love on the Brain, is one of my favorite romances of this year. I think at the time I gave it 4.5 stars, but I've included this book in quite a few videos, and as I'm talking about it more and as I'm reflecting back more on how much I really love the story, the characters, and the author, I definitely am going to put this in the top category. It's ended up as one of my favorite reads of the year, so I'm definitely putting it on top. The book is a STEMness novel by Ali Hazelwood. She wrote one last year that was quite a bit of a hit, The Love Hypothesis, and this one involves a woman in STEM who has a bit of an enemies to lovers situation going on with a guy that she knows from her PhD years, and now she needs to work with him again on a project, and it involves a lot of pining from the guy's side, and just it's a very, very cute and memorable romance for me. So yeah, definitely at the top. Now, Taylor Jenkins Reid is included twice in this list of books, and Malibu Rising is probably the more favorite book of mine out of the two that I've included, but it's not going up at the top because I've read other books by Taylor Jenkins Reid that are definitely better than these two, so both of them are going to end up in the homemade cake category. Malibu Rising first. Malibu Rising involves kind of a fictional biopic of the Riva family. We have Mick Riva, who is a famous singer, and then he has 4 children, and all 4 of them, we kind of follow their perspectives of how their lives have developed after they've had specific situations going on with their family, with their mother and father. So how their relationship with their father basically has impacted their lives. So yeah, I liked this book. I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't a favorite of mine, so it's going to end up in the homemade cake category because it's definitely better than the apple strudel category books that I've included here. And then the next book is Naked Love by Jewel Ian. I have to say that this book really took me by surprise because it really, the plot of it really reminded me of It Happened One Summer when it comes to, not the plot, but the characters. Reminded me of It Happened One Summer by Tessa Beatty, and I really genuinely disliked, almost hated that book. So when I started reading this one, I was like, uh-oh, I'm going to have another Tessa Bailey book on my hands, and I do not want to read such a book, but I kind of pushed through it, and I'm really happy that I did because it was kind of the same type of characters executed in a much better way, in my opinion. So I really like this book. I'm going to put it in the homemade cake category because it was really one that took me by surprise. I gave it 4 stars at the time, I believe. And it involves a woman who is kind of very high maintenance. She is the type of woman who is very whiny, expects everything to be done for her. She's the kind of girl or woman who prefers people doing things for her instead of herself to achieve those things. I don't know how to explain it very well. While the guy is kind of a brooding, very much hands-on type of guy, very much opposites attract story here. And they're going on a road trip together to reach a final destination where they both need to be. And in the process of that road trip, they find out things about each other that they didn't expect about each other. So I really like this one. It's definitely a 4-star read for me. The next book is the other Taylor Jenkins Reid book that I mentioned, which is called One True Loves. This one is also going in the homemade category. Like I mentioned before, it involves a woman who is very happily married to her husband, but at their 1-year anniversary, I think, he goes missing in a plane crash, and some years passed and he still hasn't been found. So I think he was legally declared dead. And she has been grieving him, and she fell in love again. Only to find out a couple of years in the future, when she gets engaged to this second guy, that her husband is actually alive and he comes back to her. And she's very much split in her decision what she should do. Should she go back to her husband, or should she choose for her new fiance? I like this one. Again, it wasn't a favorite by Taylor Jenkins Reid, but it was a good read. So I definitely want to put it in the homemade cake category. The next book is one that's one of the books that I switched up in this list, because I had originally planned to read Pachinko. I kind of switched it up and put in Book Me Secretly here because I really love this book, and it's a 5-star read for me. It's one of my favorites of the year, and it's going up at the top category because I enjoyed it so much. It's by Odette Stone. And the book is involving a hockey player who just recently transferred to a new team, and his love story is one which is kind of forbidden because he falls for the daughter of the owner of the club. And all of the 4 books within this sports romance series by Odette Stone are really good, but this one I really have a special place for because I had not picked up any books by this author before, and this one I really genuinely enjoyed. Now, the next book is by Colleen Hoover. It's Reminders of Him. It's the book that is, I think, talked about quite a bit about here on BookTube because it's been nominated for a Goodreads Choice Award this year. It was quite, it had quite a bit of reviews that were mixed. A lot of people loved it. A lot of people expected more out of it because it was missing the typical Colleen Hoover twist in the end. But I enjoyed it. I really did. I gave it 4.5 stars. And if I have to think about whether it's like an all-time favorite or at least the favorite of the year, I'm kind of torn about this one. I think comparing it to the top level, I'm going to put it in the homemade cake category. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. The book involves a woman who was in jail, and she gave birth in jail. And when she gets out, she wants to look up her long-lost daughter. And the only person who can help her reach her daughter is her daughter's father's best friend. I don't want to spoil anything else about this book so that you can go ahead and pick it up yourself. But yeah, it was a very solid 4 to 4.5 star read, and I do recommend it. The next book that I picked up, this one is going somewhere here, I think. yeah, the next book that I picked up is The Song of Achilles. I think that this book does not need any kind of introduction in terms of what it's about, because I think that everyone in the book community knows this book. It's going in the homemade category. For me, it wasn't an all-time favorite read, possibly because I think that I had heard quite a bit about this book before I picked it up, so I had high expectations for it. While I did really enjoy it, it just was an okay, like more than an okay read, but it was not like 5-star material for me. The book involves Greek mythology's kind of hero Achilles and his relationship with Patroclus, and also his whole kind of battle in Troy. So this one is definitely going in the homemade category because the creme de la creme is not the category when it comes to, at least in my opinion. Now, the next book is one that I really loved this year. It's going to end up in my top romances of the year, and the book is Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. It's definitely a favorite of mine, so it's going at the top, and it involves a small town romance between a grumpy guy and a sunshiny heroine, and there is a great found family kind of situation going on in that small town. So I really loved that aspect of the book, and there was a lot of funny moments, a lot of banter that really made me fly through the book, even though it's quite a bit of a chunky book. So I really love this one, and it's going at the top. Now, the next book, you're seeing now that we have a few books at the top, quite a few books in the homemade category, a couple of books in the apple strudel category, and then the licorice one is empty, which is quite a bit of a success if you think about it, but then someone has to join that last category so it doesn't end up all by its lonesome, and that's going to be Until November. This book, I didn't know that it was a reread for me until about the 75% mark of the book. Once I was kind of there, I was like, I really think that this book is very familiar to me. And then I found a notebook of mine where I had marked that I had read it, but I had failed to put it into Goodreads, so I thought that I had not read it yet. And this book I really apparently liked when I read it back in like 2017 or something, and then now that I'm reading it, I really am disliking it, so I'm putting it in the licorice category. I gave it 2 stars. Originally I gave it 3 stars, but now I've bumped it down to 2 stars because I really genuinely disliked this book. It involves an alpha hero and a heroine who meet each other at her father's club, and there is a misunderstanding of who she is, and he kind of approaches her in a very aggressive and unpleasant way. And I just didn't like the hero at all in this book, so I just genuinely did not like this book. So I'm putting it in the lowest level that we have in my tier ranking scheme here. Now, the next book is one that is going at the top tier. My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell is a book that is so disturbingly exquisite and it makes you feel extremely uncomfortable when you read it, but I think that that is something that is necessary for the topic that it's involving. It's involving a relationship between a teacher and a student. The teacher is grooming the teenage student, and we're seeing the aftermath of their relationship throughout the book. And it's a very heavy and, like I mentioned, disturbing topic to cover, and I think that the author did an amazing job with it. I'm still thinking about this book until today, and it's definitely one that needs to be read with a lot of caution because there's a lot of triggers in that book. The next book that I put in is The War of Two Queens. That stands for the letter Q because I could not find a book that I wanted to read that starts with the letter Q, but I'm taking this one because I have only one book that I've read which involves a queen in the title. And this book I gave 4.5 stars. It's not my favorite in the series. It's part of the Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. It's the 4th book. And I have to say that if I think about my favorites, I think book 2 and book 3 were my favorites, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and put it into the homemade category because it wasn't really a favorite for this year, and it definitely deserves to be put in kind of the upper tiers, but not in the favorites. The next book is by Chloe Liese again. Chloe Liese is making an appearance twice in this list because I read 2 books, actually read 3 books by Chloe Liese in the Berkman series this year, but this one is one that I actually liked more than Everything for You. It's called With You Forever, and I'm going to put it in the homemade cake category because again, it wasn't an all-time favorite of mine or a favorite for this year. I definitely liked it more than Everything for You. And it involves, I think, the eldest Bergman brother, Axel. He is an artist and he has a romance with one of their family friends who is staying with him. They have a forced proximity situation going on and also an arranged marriage. I really liked it. I give it 4.5 stars and I definitely recommend it. The next book, we have only 3 left, and the next book is called Zenny by Rebecca Weatherspoon. This one I'm going to put in the apple strudel category. It wasn't a bad book per se. I gave it 3 to 3.5 stars. I did enjoy some aspects of the book, but it just wasn't, maybe the pacing was not like up to my speed, or I was just missing something for it to be a remarkable read for me. And it involves an interracial relationship with a marriage of convenience situation again. And there was a very swoony hero in this book, I'm going to be honest. The hero was absolutely marvelous, kind of a cinnamon roll, and yeah, the really big tough guy with the biggest possible heart. I love these types of heroes, so I did love that aspect of the book, but it was missing something, so that's why I'm going to put it in the apple strudel category. Now, the next one is one of my surprises of this year. I really loved this book. While I did give it 4.5 stars, I believe, now that I think about it, it's one of the more memorable reads that I had, so I'm going to put it up in the creme de la creme category, even though I was previously thinking of putting it in the homemade cake with a cherry on top category. I think I'm going to stick with the creme de la creme because it really was a very extraordinary read. When I started reading it, I thought it was going to go someplace, and then it ended up someplace completely else, so it really took me by surprise. The book is called You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty, and this book is a debut novel, I think, so I really was impressed by it. It involves a woman who at the start of the book is grieving her late husband. She's going through some difficult times, kind of trying to get over her grief. She has a couple of suitors who are trying to get with her, and one of her suitors proposes for her to go to, I think, Barbados with him. And there she meets his father, and she has a romantic development with his father. So it's an age gap romance, one that involves getting over grief, or kind of dealing with grief, and also dealing with the fact that she's in a bit of a predicament of having a suitor with whom she's trying to have some kind of a relationship, but then goes on to have a relationship with his dad. So yeah, it was a very surprising read, and I'm going to keep it up on top. Unfortunately, the last book is one which is going to join until November in the licorice category. I had wanted for The Last Letter to be one which is going to be amazing, but it was first of all very difficult for me to find a romance that starts with the letter Z. And this one actually I chose because I believe it had a very high rating on Goodreads. If I'm not mistaken, it was like something like 4.2 or 4.3. So I was like, okay, this should be good. It has a cowboy on the front of the cover, and cowboys have been in this year. So I picked this one up. It's by Brenda Jackson and it's called Zane. I really didn't like this book. It's, I think, a book written maybe 10 or 12 years ago. So for me, it didn't stand the test of time. It involves, again, an alpha hero who is very much a commitment phobe, and he has a second chance romance with a woman with whom he had a very good relationship, but he ruined it because he didn't want to have anything serious with her in the beginning, and now he's kind of groveling back to her to try to win her back. I just didn't like this book. I think originally I gave it 3 stars, but as I've thought about it, I don't think it deserves 3 stars, so I've bumped it up or down to 2, and that's why it's going into the licorice category, and that will essentially wrap up all of the 26 books that I had for this list. I really hope you enjoyed this challenge, and I'm going to think of another one for 2023 to complete. It's going to be something different than this one, I hope, at least. And yeah, basically I really enjoyed reading all these books and kind of keeping track of which one will fit where, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. I'm going to do another couple of videos in the next week, so it's going to be a busy week for me, and I hope you're going to stick around and check out all of the videos that I'm going to shoot for you and that I'm going to show you in the next couple of days. And I hope to see you very soon in the next one. Have a wonderful, marvelous day. Happy reading. Take care, and bye-bye.